Hello and welcome back to Shakesyear. We are working on Edward III and we're still in Act 1, Scene 1. We get to hear from Edward himself today, which is, we were just starting the play yesterday, so it makes sense that we're still in Act 1, Scene 1 because, as I mentioned, there's a lot more monologues in this play than there were in the last one. So we kicked off the play. We're in Edward's throne room and we hear from Robert of Artois. Well, first he becomes the Earl of Richmond because he defected from France to England. And then we find out from him that actually King Edward III probably has a claim on the French throne through his mother's side, because his mother was the only daughter of the former French king, and the three sons had died without leaving any heirs. But since she came over to England and married a man, now the French are saying yeah, but the next French king has to come from the male side of the family, whatever. So King John is currently in France. But Edward is like, hey, Robert, that's good to know that, I have that claim on the throne. But then the Duke of Lorraine, who's another Frenchman, comes in and says, King Edward, King John had given you this dukedom in France and now wants you to come and swear fealty to him within the next 40 days. And if you don't, then he revokes your lands and titles and everything that you hold in France. And Edward, having just found out that he might be the rightful French king, responds by saying, see how occasion laughs me in the face. No sooner minded to prepare for France, but straight I am invited, nay, with threats, upon a penalty enjoined to come. 'Twere but a childish part to say him nay. Lorraine, return this answer to thy lord. I mean to visit him as he requests. But how? Not servilely disposed to bend, but like a conqueror to make him bow. His lame, unpolished shifts are come to light, and truth hath pulled the vizard from his face that set a glass upon his arrogance. Dare he command a fealty in me? Tell him the crown that he usurps is mine, and where he sets his foot he ought to kneel. 'Tis not a petty dukedom that I claim, but all the whole dominions of the realm, which, if with grudging he refuse to yield, I'll take away those borrowed plumes of his and send him naked to the wilderness. So what Edward is saying is, funny timing. Yeah, sure, I'll go to France, but I'll take it over. I'm not going to come and swear fealty. He owes a fealty to me. So let's maybe go to war over this whole thing. And the Duke of Lorraine is like, well, then you're a traitor. And they end up pulling swords on each other and some more harsh words are exchanged. And the Duke of Warwick, or maybe it's the Earl of Warwick, anyway, pipes up with some more threats, and Robert of Artois pipes up with some more threats. And finally, Lorraine leaves with sort of the understanding that France and England are now at war. Isn't it lovely how quickly things like that can happen? I talk about much ado about nothing. So then at that point, Montague enters, Lord Montague enters, and King Edward asks him, how's everything going in Scotland? Because at that time, Scotland was a completely separate entity with a different king, all that sort of, in its own way, Scotland still is its own separate entity, even though they share a currency, but it has different people on it in Scotland than it has in the UK. But England and Scotland were not necessarily, and still in some cases aren't necessarily, on good terms. King Edward had recently withdrawn some troops from Scotland, or pulled back some of his forces. So he asks Montague, how's everything going in Scotland? And Montague says, really not good. The second you started pulling your troops back, they disavowed the truce and they started attacking and gaining ground. And they've also taken over this castle where the Countess of Salisbury is being held. And Edward is going to have some thought. He's like, isn't that Warwick? Isn't that your daughter? And Warwick's like, yeah. And Edward is going to have some thoughts on how they should react to the whole Scottish situation now as well. So, yeah, fun stuff. We're not even out of the first scene, and we've already got 2 potential wars going on. It's a history play. I'll see you tomorrow for more. Mwah.